All right. Hey, we are back in action here on the buyer's exclusive agency contract. This is the document that, although it doesn't guarantee you get paid, as some people will say, I believe it guarantees that your client better understands the expectations of your relationship. And it clearly identifies that it gives you a great platform to begin a conversation. Whether or not you have them sign this is a great document to at least have in front of them at some point. Not even so they're reading it, but so you're showing what happens. And I'll tell you a little bit about my talking points, but if you look back at the videos about buyer consultations or the buyer packet, you'll see me go through and I talk about this form actually. I talk about not cheating on each other as key words that you'll hear me say. But buyer's exclusive agency contract. This contract is entered into and shall commence on the date by Fathom Realty, who is the broker, and John Doe, the buyer. And this contract shall terminate midnight on, and I normally make it for a year away or December 31st, 2022, or whatever, some long time away, and nobody ever balks at that, honestly. Broker agrees to diligently attempt to locate property acceptable to the buyer. So again, we're setting forth the terms so they can check us if we're doing our job or not, right? We're going to diligently attempt to locate property acceptable to the buyer, negotiate price, terms, conditions acceptable to the buyer for the purchase of the property, and shall act in buyer's best interest during the terms of this contract. Ma'am, by signing this, or I guess it was John, sir, by signing this, this is what I am telling you I'm going to do, okay? That makes sense. That's what you would expect. No surprises, but it's in writing. This is why this document may be something you want to sign, although we may decide it's not a big deal, but I wanted to make sure you at least seen this. The description of the property, you can describe the property with 3 beds, 2 baths, ranch on a basement with at least 1 acre in any of the surrounding counties of Marion County or any of the surrounding counties. Okay, cool. No problem. But here's what I write, just so basically I get paid no matter what. I'm any property in Marion County, Indiana, or immediately surrounding counties, okay? That basically, if they buy a house in this location, I get paid, period. Whether or not I was a part of it or not. I don't know how this really holds up in court unless I have been an active part of it. Let's say they find a house on their own after signing this. Do I get paid? I don't know. If they don't ever call me about it, I don't know that I get paid. They just work the deal on their own with a for sale by owner or another listing agent or something. I don't know. This is not a just lock in your paycheck sort of thing. Because again, the law would be checking, did you do this? You didn't find the property. I don't know how you'd get paid for it, but we can try. Because you showed them 20 other properties, right? That's the reason most of us do this. If we're going to have them sign it, because we're going to show them 20 properties, and then they decide to go look at one with another agent and buy it, and you're like, well, what the heck? I showed 20 houses to you. You'll have it anyway. This is the description of the property that I'm getting paid on. Retainer fee, buyer has paid a non-refundable retainer fee of, I have NA. You can absolutely charge your buyers a retainer fee. Hey, I will work hard for you. My fee is $2,000 just to get the files set up and get everything rolling. $500, whatever you want, doesn't matter. I don't charge anything, but you absolutely could. And heck, you can try. Go ahead. I don't recommend it. I just go help people. And then we figure it out. Commission. In consideration for the services to be performed by the broker, buyer agrees to pay broker a commission of X dollars or 3% of the total purchase price. That's what I've already filled in for you. Total commission paid to broker shall not be less than $2,000. I think these are important numbers. It's saying that I'm going to get 3% of the purchase price or $2,000, whichever is more. That's what that says. In the event the seller pays a commission, the seller, okay, not your buyer, the seller pays a commission, the BAC, buyer's agent commission, pays a commission under a listing agreement, right? The listing side has an agreement with their seller that they're going to cooperate with us. And listing agreement with the consent of the buyer is to receive any portion thereof. that portion shall be credited against the buyer's financial obligations to broker, to us. So if they owe us, it's a $200,000 house, that means they owe us $6,000 because of this. If we get 3% from the selling side, then this is gone. They don't owe us 3% on top of the 3% BAC. However, if we get 2% from the listing side, you subtract 2% from this 3%, the buyer still owes us 1%. So it's important that they know that. If you're going to sign this form, you're going to say there's very few scenarios where you're going to have to pay us anything. But in the event we buy a house and there is no financial, the 3% is not offered to us through a listing agreement from the seller, then you'll make up the difference between this number and what we get from the seller. The great news is we will negotiate that into your purchase because you need to wrap that into your loan anyway. Why? It's a great question here, and it's coming up in lawsuits all over at least in a couple states. But why is the BAC, the buyer's agent commission, paid by the seller instead of the buyer paying their own? Well, think of it like closing costs. If the buyer pays it, it cannot be wrapped into the purchase price and therefore the loan, and therefore it has to be real dollars. Just like $5,000 worth of closing costs for getting your loan. If the buyer pays it on their own, it's cash out of their pocket. If the seller pays it, it's wrapped into the loan. So they're not paying that cash out of pocket. So if you have a $500,000 house at 3%, that's $15,000 cash out of your buyer's pocket, unless the seller will agree to pay it as a part of the purchase. So let's say you're working with a for sale by owner. This is one of the ways I talk to them, and they want $100,000 for their house. And I call them as an agent. I say, I've got a buyer that could be very well interested in your house. However, I am under an obligation right here, or the buyer's under an obligation to pay me 3% of the purchase price of any home that they purchase, because we've been working together for a long time and I've been representing them. The for sale by owner says, well, I'm not paying real estate agents, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, let me ask you a quick question, Mr. For sale by owner. If you have to pay me 3% of the purchase price, rough numbers here, and you want $100,000 in your pocket at the end, how much do I need to offer you so I get 3% and you get $100,000? Well, it's pretty easy math. It's not exact math, but just, again, for simplicity here, my client's going to need to offer you $103,000, 3% of which is approximately $3,000, so I get that. And looky there, you're still left with $100,000. But guess what happened? We got a loan for $103,000. My client didn't have to pay that 3% out of their pocket. This is why this is such a great thing that sellers pay for their buyer agent, for the buyer's agent, okay? Because then the buyers don't have to come out of pocket. That's it. I mean, that's the reason. Because in closing costs world, the same thing, right? If we wrap it in, I'll pay you $205,000 for your house, but I want $5,000 in closing cost help from the seller. Seller still gets the $200,000 list price. We get the $5,000 we need to pay for closing costs, but we didn't have to come out of pocket. The lender wrapped it into the loan. So we paid a minuscule down payment on that $5,000 of, call it 10%. So we paid $500 instead of $5,000. Pretty good. That's why this happens. So, and that's how part of your explanation, because we want to wrap this into your purchase. So in the event we're not getting 3% from the other side because they're just not being aggressive in marketing, that's fine. We will negotiate it into your deal like closing costs. Okay? So there should not be a scenario, or a very slim scenario, where you actually have to come out of pocket for any of this money. This is just here so that you that everybody knows I'm getting paid. You know I'm getting paid, and I'm getting paid by you, although the seller may pay on your behalf, and that this is just kind of an agreement between us that we're not going to cheat on each other. You're not going to go look at 20 houses with me and then decide to go to an open house and write an offer with the open house agent. Because if you do, you'll owe the 3% to me. So, because that's the only way I get paid is if we close on a deal. So I work and 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 I show houses and I show houses and I write offers and I write offers and do research. And then we finally close on a house and I get paid after months of work potentially. That's why this is important to me. And this is important to you because it outlines what my role is to get paid. So we have a better relationship now because everything's clear. But remember, any portion that the seller gives you is credited against this, and they only bring the difference. The commission shall be due, earned, and promptly paid if the buyer or any other person acting for the buyer or on buyer's behalf acquires a real property or interest as described herein during the term of this contract through the services of broker or otherwise. Or otherwise, right? So this is where it gets hairy in my opinion, but during the term of this contract, if the buyer or somebody on behalf of the buyer acquires real property or interest in a property during the term of the contract, through my services or otherwise, I mean, just self-searching or another agent, I get paid. Buyer or other person acting for the buyer on buyer's behalf acquires real estate property or interest within which was disclosed to buyer by broker during the term of this contract within 180 days after termination. So if I sent them 123 Main Street, then we didn't do anything with it, but I sent it to them. Then this contract expires. Then they buy it a month after this contract expires. We still get paid. Because one, we disclosed the property. And two, it's within 180 days after termination or expiration. Okay? I added expiration. That's a great question, honestly. But after this contract is over. What this is primarily termination side of things, what this is primarily doing, and it may not work on expiration, it may only work on termination, because what this is primarily avoiding is buyer and seller getting together and going around the back of the agent. So I go to the buyer, say, hey, look at 123 Main Street. We look at it, they like it. Then they randomly call you and say, hey, you know what? We're just not going to buy a house. Can we do a mutual release on this buyer's contract? We go, yeah, we're nice people. See ya, thanks, call us when you're ready. Then 3 weeks later, you find out they bought the house with another agent, or they bought the house straight through to the seller because they met him or they knew him already from church. Then you get paid. Listing contracts have some similar language. These are other, you could add something in here. I don't know what you'd add, but you could add that, in the event buyer wants to be released from this contract, buyer seller retains the right to either not release or release, but buyer will owe buyer's agent $500 for every house shown during the course of this contract. I'm just making something up, right? You could add stuff like that in there, as long as everybody agrees to it. 31, broker's commission for services rendered in respect to any broker is solely a matter of negotiation between broker and the buyer, and it's not fixed, controlled, just recommended or maintained by the IAR, local board, the listing service, or any person or party to the contract. So all this stuff above is negotiable between broker and buyer. It's not fixed, controlled, right? This is not a price gouging. This is not a price fixing scandal. Office policy. Buyer acknowledges they received the written office policy. Okay, so that's good. We already did that with them in theory, but they're also acknowledging here that they got it. Agency relationships. You're going to see again here duties, which we've already been through on the office policy, but please read this again. Limited agency authorization, again telling us we can be a limited agent. They're allowing that. And then what we're not going to do or say in regard to limited agency. Consent to represent other buyers. This is a great one, the one we haven't talked about. Buyer understands and agrees that broker may, from time to time, represent other buyers who may be interested in acquiring the same property. Buyer expressly waives any claim regarding blah, 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 breach of fiduciary duty or breach of contract based solely on broker's representation of other buyers who seek to acquire the same property. So you got two buyers. I've got this question, right? And that means, in my opinion, you guys haven't read this if you're asking this question. Or at least you don't remember it, right? But that's why we read things over and over again. When they sign this, they are giving express consent that they know and you're allowed to show the same house to multiple of your buyers and write offers. You're not going to disclose things that you're not allowed to disclose. You're not going to tell any of the buyers information they wouldn't know unless they were literally represented by you, right? If another agent was bringing your second buyer, they wouldn't know about your first buyer and about their offer and about that stuff. So you can't disclose those information. But this is good. You can, and I have, written offers on the same property for different buyers. Buyers should be aware that owner of the properties may utilize audio or video devices to monitor the property. Buyers should not discuss strategies or other confidential information within the property because of that. But they release our liability from that. Fair housing. Broker will not prepare, review, or submit personal information letters, including photographs from buyer to seller. Confidentiality. Buyer has been advised of the possibility that seller or seller's reps may not treat the existence, terms, or conditions of the offers as confidential. So when we write an offer, I may not tell anybody else about it, but the seller absolutely might, okay? Further conditions, you can write something else in there that you need. Don't know what you might write, but you could write kind of whatever makes sense, but you're not a lawyer, so be careful. And then here are the acknowledgements. Okay, buyer read and understands the contract. It's funny, if he doesn't understand the rest of this, he probably doesn't understand this line, but that's fine. Contract contains an entire agreement, can only be changed in writing and signed by all parties. It's binding on all parties and their heirs, blah, blah, blah. Buyer has been advised to seek professional advice. Buyer has received a copy of the contract. It's hilarious that you would sign that you received a copy of the contract. I think you would need to sign the copy of the contract, which then you need to sign the copy of the copy, potentially. Anyway, it's kind of funny. Welcome to legal stuff. Broker holds a valid Indiana real estate license. Buyer acknowledges that broker's commission, if broker's commission will be paid by a third party, seller, or cooperating broker, that such relationship may impose limitations on the range of properties broker may show to a buyer, which is true if we're not going to get paid by the buyer, if we're gonna put a zero in the paycheck line, so let's just jump up here. You can absolutely sign this document with nothing here, okay? So then if that's happening, that means we're only getting paid by outside parties. Well, guess what? I'm not showing you a house that I'm not getting paid on. A for sale by owner that will not cooperate, yeah, I'm not gonna show it to you. I'm not even gonna tell you about it. I'm going to actually probably say that this house isn't available for us. Buyer consent to receive communications, right? We talked about this in a previous one on a purchase agreement, that this is communication consent. And if I send you an email and then you tell me I didn't tell you, and then I show you an email where I sent you an email that told you, guess what? I win. You said I could send emails. I sent an email. You just didn't read it. That's your fault, Mr. Buyer. Buyer acknowledged broker has no duty to disclose racial, ethnic, or religious composition in neighborhoods, community, or building, whether persons with disabilities are housed in the home, blah, blah, blah. This is fair housing. Where the word broker appears, it shall mean licensee as provided in this code, Indiana code. Anyway, bunch of other stuff here. Then everybody signs. Agent signs. Managing broker signs. Buyers sign. Okay? Great document. Use it, don't use it. I tend to use it in the event I'm working with people I don't know. If I know them very well, I may not use it, but I would encourage you to use it all the time. And if you don't want to, quote, lock them in, or you feel weird locking them in, then put zero in here and still sign the form. Okay? It's still got other good stuff in it other than just your paycheck. So put a zero here, put a zero, NA here, and an NA here, whatever you want to do, and still get it signed. It still does a lot of really good stuff for you. Not a requirement, but it's a good idea. All right, that is the buyer's exclusive agency contract.